Welcome to the Mojo Mundi podcast, where it's all about magic, manifesting, and movement. I'm Jenny Watts, the Dancing Witch, and this 20th Mojo Mundi episode takes us on a soul's journey down the long and winding road. I have come to call my journey through this life my living path, and by living I mean alive, changing, undefinable, evolving. I think when we talk of a path, we think of a well-worn trail that many others have walked. We see a visible design in the soil and plant life, or a paved thoroughfare that has a pre-planned destination. But the path of each soul is unique, uncharted, and unchartable. We each create a unique path that is coming into existence in each moment. It is very difficult to see the reality of the living path when it is our own. We are in the moment, taking each step, caught up in our thoughts and projections. It is different to be the observer of another's path. While books and movies give us the opportunity to be the observer of a life path, these works have a beginning, a middle, and an end, not to mention foreshadowing, flashbacks, and so on. These structural elements are important for storytelling. They also give a false clarity, a false stability, a false solidity to the living path experience. My guest for this episode has graciously agreed to lay out her living path as it is right now. I encourage you to watch for the twists and turns, the uncertainties and surprises. I urge you to look for the little details that point to inspiration, opportunity, allowing, the experiences and encounters that become idiosyncratic cairns on her living path. I invite you to allow her narrative to help you observe your own living path, to listen open-heartedly to her experiences of navigating a journey that is full of mystery and magic, so that you may view your own living path with love and reverence. So tell me who you are and what you do.
Well, I am Kim Quigley. I am now a retired or restructured teacher from Bozeman School District after teaching 40 years. But I've had many paths along the way. Mm-hmm. And I also have an MFA in directing and theater, and that's played a huge part of who I am and why I am where I am. What I'm doing right now is restructuring. I'm manifesting. I am using everything I can because I was working for Humanities Montana, which is no longer since we've lost our National Endowment of the Arts. So this is where the manifesting comes in. We'll start with the yoga because it all comes together. And so how did it start with, I've always done yoga for strength and flexibility since my teens. And then once I retired from teaching, I was in Escalante, Utah, owned a home down there when COVID hit. And talk about something that allows you to go into another direction. So we're talking 2 million acres with 400 people. We're in a home. I got offered a job on March 15th to work for Humanities Montana, which was going around all of the state of Montana and teaching in libraries, in schools, any nonprofit, all about Indian education for all, which is my passion. And I was so excited about that. And I have all kinds of presentations that I have presented for that. So they had sent me a contract that morning, March 15th. And then at noon, they took it back, said we're closing because of COVID. So talk about, let's manifest again. I'm going to have to change to something else. And while I was thinking about what I want to do, I happened upon Nancy Ruby, who was a big yoga person here, had a studio, which is now Namaha, which is a studio in Bozeman. And she said, well, Kim, why don't you join me? This is free for 6 weeks to do the spirit of giving and how to incorporate yoga with your consciousness. It's really hugely important for people to understand yoga is not just movement for strength and flexibility. Yoga is spirituality. Yoga is your life. Yoga is like a religion in a way, but it's not organized. You are your own yoga person. And I went, I never thought of yoga that way. And so that got me started, and that's what I did for 6 weeks while I was in Escalante, which is my spiritual spot. people don't know about 2 million acres of the most beautiful desert and mountains and rivers. It is, I mean, you can't go there without it just saying, oops, I am a spiritual person now. I believe in everything, consciousness, the ether. So anyway, so I did that for 6 weeks. And then she said, do you want to get certified in yoga? And I said, well, yeah, it'd be great. So we started, and I was still in Escalante. And so we started with Zoom yoga to get certified and did that for 1.5 years. Now, this is an intense yoga. It's not just do it in 6 weeks. This is 2 years of getting certified because she didn't just bring in alignment and strength and flexibility. She brought in all aspects of yoga. That hit me as that's where I want to be in all aspects, not just the movement part, because that is such a little teeny weeny part of the idea of yoga. So when COVID, we were allowed to go home, we started meeting in the studio on weekends to finish everything up. In Bozeman, which is right by Wild Crumb. It's called Namaha now, her studio. Beautiful, beautiful studio. And that's where I said to her, I'm having a little aha here, Nancy. So this is just sort of the tip of the iceberg. She says, yep, you got it. It's just the tip. And then that's when I started to dig deeper. And that is really where my circle story begins there. And when you asked me to talk about what do I do now, I tried teaching in classes and I didn't like it. And I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 40 years. And I didn't like it because I want to do the wooey stuff. I want to do the intention. I want to change people or have a part in helping people accept what happens to them and what they can do for change. Not just sit there for 45 minutes and lead them through a yoga class. And that's what yoga was about at that point, except for Nancy. I wanted to dig deeper with people. And then I found there was this spiritual part that was coming into me. It created my empathy where I could look at people, probably because I was open to doing it more, and my kids were out of the house, and I wasn't teaching full time, and having life happen to me all the time, where I could look at people and I kind of knew what to say to them to help them heal. And it would be great if they would want to do yoga, because that opens up the passageways for healing. But a lot of people don't feel comfortable with yoga. You have to call it maybe stretching in Bozeman, Montana, or you had to come up with other names. So I learned to move around that, and I've learned that there are certain things that I could do on an individual basis that was way more successful and worked with my philosophy of what yoga was. So I would work with my friends that way. And I'd say, do you want to start with yoga? And a lot of them did, and some of them felt really uncomfortable doing that because they just said, I've only hurt myself doing yoga. And I said, well, then you weren't really doing yoga. It's not about hurting yourself or pushing yourself. It's going to your own comfort level. And then after that, the wooiness starts because now you're relaxed. Now you're centered. Now you are in the zone. And now you'll be open to change and to help yourself. And that to me is a huge part of what I do now. Where I would do yoga more than anywhere else is I have a group of women. Every summer we float the rivers, and we're called the WOM Rats, Women on Montana Rivers and Tequila Society. And we would float 2 or 3 times a week, and just having conversations with them and knowing the paths and the tools that I have helps because we're all on IKs or duckies. Everybody has their own boat, so you could switch from one person to another, and everybody's relaxed and open and loving nature, which is huge in yoga, is accepting and loving and getting from nature. So that's kind of what's my medium, is a kayak. And then we started camping 1 week a year in August, where the WOM Rats would all come together, and we go to Paradise, which is now called Dan Bailey. I refuse to call it that. Paradise Campground on the Yellowstone. And I'd set up my yoga tent, And I would invite people to come and do yoga in the morning with me. And I would do yoga my way, which means we start with an intention. We start with dropping in. We maybe spend 20 minutes on very easy flow movement where I could maybe just help them with alignment. And then from there, we'd go into a meditation. And that's where I started learning about yin and yoga nidra, how they go beautifully together. And yin yoga is when you hold a pose for 1 to 3 minutes, and it works on your fascia, which releases all of the stress of your life. It releases anything you happen to be thinking about because you can focus just on that one little hold for 3 to 5 minutes. And then we do maybe 3 is a very magic number for me. 5 is a magic number, 7. And we would do 3 to 7 positions, hold them for 3 to 5 minutes. And then we would do a yoga nidra. Now, the beauty of yoga nidra is that it is proven to heal your brain. Harvard did studies on how it heals people with PTSD. And when soldiers would come back from Vietnam, which my brother was one of those, and they just released them, and America hated them because we didn't believe in the Vietnam War, and they didn't have a welcome home like in World War II or the Korean War. They just released them, and that created huge PTSD in a lot of soldiers who just gave so much. So they started doing testing on these PTSD soldiers before and after using this yoga nidra techniques, which was started 3,000 to 5,000 years ago and has developed since then. And the beauty of this is if you weren't a believer before, now we have scientific proof that this does comfort you. It does change your brain. I was so excited about doing 2 things together to help people that I thought was a no-brainer. We release your fascia, get you to relax, get you breathing, and then the meditation, which people have a hard time meditating because, we call them, monkey brain, where you jump from limb to limb, and I don't know how to make it stop, and I don't know what to do. Well, you'll think about ocean, blah, blah, blah. But if you do yoga nidra, I tell you what to do. And that's what people needed. They needed someone to guide them through a yoga nidra, half an hour to 45 minutes afterwards. So the combination of an hour and a half of yin and then yoga nidra after that, people came out of that changed. And I noticed that, and I did that with my friends because they would first be so kind to me,
Right. It's where you start, right?
That's where you start.
With the people you have.
With the people you have and love and care about. And then they would say, I have never, ever experienced that. So they're giving me true feedback. So anyway, and that's how I do yoga. I don't do classes. And I've had people ask me to do classes. Actually, this Namaha, which would be lovely to go back. But it's like, I have to do it my way or no other way. Mm-hmm. So it would be an hour and a half. And I think I would be accepted, and maybe I'll be ready for that. But this has been how many years? 12 years. And maybe I'm ready for that because I've had to listen to where I was meant to go. And you were asking me about the manifestation, which allows you to be open to spirit. And this is another change that happened to me. I always thought spirit came from a tree, from your roots, because you have your 7 chakras, which is huge. You have to heal your first chakra, which is foundational, and then you work your way up till you get to spirit, which is your 7th chakra, in order to get full understanding of consciousness. And so I would work with people through their different chakras, and you kind of feel, and this is Reiki, and you kind of feel, oh, you've got your foundational through asking questions is down, but maybe you want more creativity. Do you want to be able to have people hear you? Do you need your heart? Which one do you feel like you need work on? And we would work on that. But then I always thought, because we were working from the ground up, that's where your strength comes in. And so when I would teach it, I would show a tree. So you have your tree of knowledge where it starts with the roots, and then it goes to the trunk, the strength, and then you go out through the leaves, and then energy goes up through your head to touch whatever spirit's up there. And now I'm totally think something different. Through my investigations, I really think spirit works their way down through all, well, you have to believe in an afterlife, or that we never really die. Mm-hmm. Our energy is released, it recycles, comes back in another way, and it might be a dog. And this is very Buddhist and very Hindu. And that now I'm going deeper into a different direction. And that's the beauty of yoga. It's the beauty. It changes with you. It's not just something that you believe in that, and then you stay stagnant. It changes with your needs. And that's what makes it so powerful. As you mature, so does your yoga mature. And really, this coming in through spirit has only happened this past year. And how long have I been doing this? And it's because I've been reading these books that have a lot of Native American wisdom. And I've been embracing that, the path of souls, where no one ever really dies. You just go back into the universe and you come back in different ways. I've been reading books about that. To me, that is not chance. That's the way I was supposed to mature in my yoga. And then I'm just reading this real fun book by Dan Brown. He did all those Da Vinci Code and the one thing about Dan Brown, everything he writes about is based in truth. Now I'm reading his latest one, which is Secrets to Secrets, takes place in Prague, and I was just in Prague. Oh my gosh. I was there because I went to Europe for 2 weeks, and we started in Bucharest, went to Vienna, and then to Prague. And so I can see all these places he's talking about. And this is where he starts talking about the idea of the halo. And if you look at Renaissance art, everybody has a halo. And the way that Christianity looks at it is that because the energy comes from within, with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and then we reach out to God, and that is Christianity. But the halos weren't meant for that. They were meant to open up passageways from the spirit, and you go down that way. And boy, does that fit yoga. Boy, does that fit manifestation. All of that. So I'm real excited about that now. And I don't know how that's going to manifest at this point, but let me move on to how I think it might. So here I am. I finally, I'm developing this idea about yoga and yin and meditation and incorporating that into my life because I have time, because I'm not working for Humanities Montana. And then COVID is over. Humanities Montana starts, and I start developing, because of my interest in Native American wisdom, I realized the state of Montana has 8 reservations and 12 tribal nations, and nobody in Montana knows about them. And it's in our Constitution that you're supposed to teach it to your classes. And being a teacher, I went, what the heck? Why aren't teachers teaching this? Well, of course it's because they make these proclamations and then they don't give you any way to do it successfully to your students. Being a teacher and somebody who loves to write lesson plans and curriculum, and that's kind of my gig. Here we are going together again. I've got my Indian education. I've got my passion for writing curriculum and lesson plans. And because I have a theater background, Ginny, as you know, I don't ever let the kids, I don't do worksheets. I present a question and the kids or the adults do all the work. And that, to me, is the best way to teach and to get buy-in. So I develop Indian Ed stuff with that in mind. And so the first thing I do is pictographs to poetry. I'm wearing my pictographs right now because that was like from 3,000 years ago. That was the newspaper and the letters that would touch people. Kids, they would get that. Not only that, when you want them to write their own story, everybody can draw pictographs because it's stick figures, right? So I said, oh, there's a perfect medium. We started learning about the needs of Native Americans 3,000 years ago and how they are exactly the same needs of people now. And from there, we could look and see what their needs were, and then we could write our own pictogram. And then, of course, everything I do goes into poetry. So from there, they looked at their pictograph, and I made it a circle of life. This is where I started. And I'm talking about kindergartners all the way through teachers and people in colleges, because it's all the same. And then from there, I gave them a simple way to write a poem. I used one poem that was written by a Native American, a modern Native American, and it has to do with nature. And it starts with I am a blue horse running across the plain. That's our template. And so that gives me the ideas of how to go deeper into more Native American wisdom, starting with pictographs to petroglyphs to poetry. And that was my very first one. And humanities would pay me to do it all over Montana, and it didn't cost schools a penny. Wow. They would pay for my room and board. They'd pay for my mileage. They paid me $400 a day, but I didn't care because now I'm doing my dream, and I'm getting paid to travel all over Montana, especially eastern Montana. I'll remember one game changer. It was in Fairview, a town of 700. I think there's more elementary kids than adults. Very red area. Mm-hmm. But the person who invited me in is the high school social studies teacher, and he's an adopted Native American, never found out his tribal affiliation. So I went and did pictographs to poetry, and then I started teaching about the essential understandings regarding Montana Indians, because they didn't even know it. And the big aha, Jenny, was me saying, what's the closest reservation you have here? And nobody knew that there even was a reservation, or what the reservations were, because they never studied it. And I said, you've got reservations all around you. Your little town is closer to these reservations, maybe not more than Shoto, but you two are the closest, and you are surrounded by Indians. So let's begin. And so we started learning about the essential understandings regarding, and why that is such a thing of beauty, which when I worked for Indian Ed, and another friend, Jennifer Statham, who was a coach, she was the Indian Ed coach when she was in Bozeman, and then she went into Indian Ed in Helena. We were the two white women. We didn't help write them, but they asked us for our opinions because we were educators. So actually, Jennifer did help write something. She was Jewish, and she said, I go through the same thing Indians do, or Native Americans, but they want to be called Indians. I asked the guy who's still there, Mike Jetty, I said, why did you pick Indians instead of Native Americans or First Peoples? Or he goes, Indigenous or whatever. And he goes, because you've been calling us Indians for years, and why change it now? I thought that was interesting, but I do say Native Americans or Indigenous or First Peoples. That's because I feel more comfortable. But really they want the most is for you to get to know their tribal affiliation. And I liken this to Europe. This is why Europe is so interesting. It's because if you go to Europe and if you call someone who's from Spain a French person, they'd be so mad at you. And it's the same thing with the indigenous people here. They all have a tribal affiliation. And when I explain that to teachers, they all go, I never thought of that. Oh, I said, well, yeah. So let's make an effort to say, what's your tribal affiliation, and not what reservation you come from, because reservations have quite a few different tribal affiliations. But we need to know about this. So now I'm in a thing of beauty for me, my manifestation through yoga, and everything has come together. And I started developing workshops that with Google presentations, and my gift was I would give it to the teacher. And I'd say, now you can bring me back next year, or you have it. Now you have lessons, and it's all in a slide deck. And I've got my notes of what you want to say and so on and forth. So that's my gift to you. So now I'm doing, I don't know, Deepak Chopra, you go back to him, and it's all about, that's manifestation, is his 7 laws. And so I'm just living my dream. And then the last one I did was boarding schools. Deb Hogland, during the Biden administration, gave a lot of money for people to develop, for people to know about what boarding schools did. And why this is so important is because people kept saying to the indigenous, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Why, that was years ago. We all came in as immigrants and now we're doing just fine. What is that? Why can't you pull yourself up and just work your way in? And what they didn't realize, and which if you want to realize it, that's one thing. But the other is because you took their language away. And it's all about their language because their language is how they describe things, whether it's directions, whether it's their heart, whether it's their relationship, and it ties in with nature. And when you travel all over the world or go to different places, the language is so important that when you take language away, you cut them off their heels, and they never will heal, ever, unless some people do because they have persistence, resiliency, or they've had parents who supported them to break out. But there's like so much more. So what nations are doing in Montana and hopefully all over the United States, they're starting kids in preschool learning the language. But we can get them at 2 and 3 and 4 with great success. So that was exciting. Realize that their grandparents went to the boarding schools, and they got whipped, thrown in the cellar if they tried to speak their own language. And so that was my whole idea of teaching boarding schools through humanities, because I wanted people, white folk, to understand why they just can't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but there are other ways that we can help. And what is the most successful is when they start with language classes in preschool. So I had this amazing project that was happening. Met this guy when my husband and I were in Glacier, and this is Blackfeet. And they still have their original land. They're one of the few tribes that still have their original land. Of course, they're struggling, especially with their high school kids, middle school kids. But this man that we met at East Glacier, and we were staying in the town itself, he is a musician. And his wife is a Blackfeet. He knows the school, and he knows the guy he was the preschool through 12th grade language person. And what he's been doing is creating sort of a Mr. Rogers preschool effect for these kids that he's trying out, putting the language back in preschool. And he's making these cards with the language so they can read and they can develop a picture. So they're like flashcards. And what he wants to do is he wants to start filming what he does so he can send it out to everybody else of at least the other Blackfeet nation of this is one way to do it, and then maybe it would catch on to other tribal nations. So I said, that is really exciting, and I can help you with that, and we can write a grant. And then he said, what I want to do is I want to work with the middle school and the high schools because they're so angry, but I really think if they could write music and then they could write their own, then we could record them in their music. That would be powerful. And I said, music is poetry, and I can teach them how to write poetry because that's my deal, is teaching people how to write poetry. So if we start them with, I'll do the poetry part, you help them put their poetry into music. I still get goosebumps when I think about this great project. Well, we got $10,000 for them from Humanities for recording equipment, to hire people, and so on and so forth. I was going to go down for 2 weeks. I was going to get paid by Humanities to help with what they needed. This was like the epitome for me of how to help people, what they need to move on, and I think this would have made a huge difference. Well, then, of course, at that time, we have a new administration who decided that we didn't want to have any National Endowment of the Arts anymore because that's how we were funded, was through National Endowments of the Arts. Everything just stopped. So now I'm back into manifestation and asking the universe, where am I supposed to go? And this was my swan song job. I could have done this till I was dead. I could see all the possibilities. Plus I was going around and teaching boarding schools to schools where then I was teaching them this is what really happened. And I went through the theme of resiliency. Why were some Native Americans resilient and why weren't some resilient? And how can you empathize? Because when was a time you were resilient and when was a time you weren't resilient? Because you have to have a way to create empathy, and empathy only happens when you have a connection. That was really catching on. Well, everything catches on when it's free to a school, and humanities was helping. And then when they closed that down, I had 2 gigs left, and one was in Havre, first grade. They have like 9 first grades, a huge Native affiliation. So I have a lot of these Native kids in first grade, and I've had Native kids at Chief Joseph for 10 years, and I see warriors. They are born with a warrior spirit, but nowhere to exhibit it.
Right.
And so I have this little first grader. Jeez, he is born. I could just see him exuding warriorism, and just he's the one who's always like moving and doesn't know what to do with this energy. So I do pictographs of poetry with these 9 for over 4 days, and they pay for it out of their own money because there's no more money through. And I went, oh my gosh. And then they wanted me to come back to teach the teachers how to do this in the summer, and they were going to pay me out of their own money. And they gave me a blanket. They gave me a dream catcher, first group to do that, and said, thank you. And I went, hopefully you'll come back. Well, they couldn't get the funding for this summer. Of course, schools have no money, for crying out loud. But maybe next, who knows? So that's out there. And it's not only just the Native message, but also one of my gifts because of theater is my teaching approach and how I don't have kids sit down and draw and write. I have them move all the time and create and act and use nature and all the things that you're supposed to do when you're manifesting. So there's poetry and art and movement, and they wanted me to show teachers and help them find ways to do that as well. And that's from my theater background. So you look at all the things that come together for this. I wasn't meant to teach in a university. It was it was this I was meant to do. So I got that on the back burner now. But then my last gig was for Charlie Russell Museum in Great Falls. And these are old people like me. And they wanted me, they have a group that meets once a month. And they wanted me to come to do my boarding schools because they were interested in that. Well, get this. Their exhibit now is a Native American who was born in the late 1800s during scarlet fever time, became deaf and blind because of scarlet fever, lost 5 brothers because of scarlet fever. Now we're talking resiliency. Went to Fort Shaw, got out of Fort Shaw, and just continued on to be this amazing sculptor. And they were showing his show, and I said, why don't I come down when you have that there? Because I can tie a lot of things in with art and sculpture and resiliency. Think of the resiliency this guy has. So I went down there, and I had those people crying because of this is what happened during boarding schools. And I went, this is going to kill me not to be able to do this anymore. But at least I went out with a bang. And I've had so many of them keep writing to me and suggesting books because I have every single book that was ever written about a boarding school ever and bring them out. And it was such a beautiful exchange of ideas. And they paid for me. That was the last gig. But I've been in hibernation waiting. Not really hibernation, but just letting things sit and sift. And the thing of beauty, Jenny, of me bumping into you, again, synchronicity, as we've talked about before, is that I needed to get out of that sit and sift time to see which direction I was going to go in again, because I knew I wasn't finished. I just didn't know how it was going to show itself. So this has gotten me excited again. I started writing down all the things I remembered, how it happened to me. It put my beliefs to a test. Other life happenings have put my belief to a test. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I want to do a GoFundMe because I really believe in this. And I'm thinking, oh, man, I'd have to go fund me for each school, or I'd have to ask them to write because no one's going to just give me money willy-nilly because they want proof, which I don't blame them. And I'm not into that right now. And, well, if it's supposed to, and then I'm thinking about, well, maybe I should be going into yoga now to do that deeper dive. And then I get offered this potential job in Namaha to do that. So that's up in the air, but do I want to do that? But then my daughter writes to me yesterday, and she lives in Big Sky, and they're having a Native American film festival this weekend. And I can't go because I have to go help my brother. I said, I can't go, but I will ask Shane Doyle, who was huge in the movement,
yes.
you know, Shane, and Mike Jetty, and I'll write, there's another gal who is going to school at MSU, and I have a friend who's teaching there now who said, would I talk to her because she wants to find out ways to help the Indian nations. Would you talk to her about some ideas? And I said, sure. So things are like little blossoms are kind of popping up. So I spread the word out because the gal who created this didn't know how to advocate for this beautiful film festival that's happening. She knew how to pull the films together, but not how to spread the word. So I said, I'll get things going, the word spread out. That's the circle. That's the circle of life or of my story of manifestation.
For now, right?
For now. For now. So, but now it's sitting and sifting, and we'll see. And what am I okay with? What am I mean, I just want to find another way. I'd love to go back to Blackfeet and finish that project.
Yes.
Can you imagine? I'd like to be able to go around with the boarding school idea and to tell people this is why they can't pull themselves up by the bootstraps, but a way that they can combine it with the early education aspect. I just am opening up to when time is ready, time is ready. And then I bump into you. Fun, I know. So talk about spirits coming in through my halo. I'm reading this book. I'm going, yes, that's my halo. Spirits coming into me now again I'm not finished yet. I'm just being shown another path.
Would you talk about how you have navigated those times when the path seems to have hit a dead end, or there's an obstacle that appears with shocking suddenness?
I was very bitter and angry when that happened because this was my calling to me.
Yes.
My vocation, my avocation.
Your spirit.
My spirit, and I was so bitter. And what's funny, meeting you has a purpose, and I went through everything that fueled what I've been telling you, and because I've been thinking about it, the past couple of days, I've let that bitterness go, saying, okay, you're ready for the door to open now, Kim, because you've let that bitterness go, and the bitterness has to go first before another door is open. Don't expect a door to open and then, now I'm being taken care of. It doesn't work that way. You have to come to terms with what's in your heart because bitterness only hurts you. They don't care that it went. You know what I mean? It only hurts you. And I know that, and I knew that. This is one thing with a friend. We usually work out together in the mornings and we have a cup of coffee and we share a goodie or whatever. And she was just talking about the same thing. And I said, I'm meeting with Ginny. I can't believe you just said that. She said, I've finally let the bitterness go of what happened to her before. And that was 25 years ago. Yeah. And I said, now you're open because it has to come from your heart. Mm-hmm. I said, and this is the way that I can recognize. But I'll tell you, I was at a standstill because I was so angry and bitter. Yes. I think I just had a couple of years of readjusting and learning. And finally, I'm able to pull my experience from that to support what I'm going through now. Yeah. And I had 2 years, a lot of somatic meaning working through things through yoga and meditation and journaling and drawing and writing. And whenever life happens in a way that I don't like, I have been given those tools.
And a lot of that is in the body.
In the body, yes.
You
Your
press into the
hips
body.
and your, how you keep it. And I've taken courses and I've needed to do that. And so now it's sped up. So this only happened in May. So for me to go through this in 3 months is like fast. But
Right.
I have the tools to work through it. And everybody has, like it took my friend 25 years. It took me 2 years of filling my toolbox, so to speak, that works for me. That works for me.
Right.
And so when that happened, anger and bitterness, it only took me a few months to say, okay, Kim, start journaling, start doing your yoga, start exercising, get back into nature, and stop being so angry of something you have absolutely no control.
No control.
And then, I go back. I start with Deepak. I go back with Deepak. Once you let go of that, then the abundance can happen.
Right.
But abundance can't happen if you blame others for your lack of
Sure.
abundance. Everything just reveals itself as you go along in life, and that helps you not be bitter when you know it's going to work out. Just give it time.
That's it.
You have to give it time.
And part of it is allowing the bitterness. The bitterness is a message, right? It's a message. This is not what
Yes.
I want. This is not where I want to be. This is not in harmony with my soul. Okay?
Exactly.
And
You have to have the yin and the yang. You have to have both. And
and
that's
you have
what
to
life
allow
is.
it. And you have to allow it.
Allow it.
And
And it just seems that things don't change until you allow it, rather than, things are changing now, I get it. For me, it doesn't happen that way. Once
doesn't.
I let it go, then I'm like, everything starts, whoa, okay. But you've got to let it go first. It's magic. That's what's magical, is when you go in this direction and you start believing this way, life becomes magical. All of life, even the tough parts, become magical. And I love the magic.
sometimes hearing the right question, writing someone else's curiosity about ourselves, or being truly seen and heard in open-hearted presence can be the catalyst for us to step into observing our own living path. From this perspective, we can suddenly see the next step, the hidden snag, the right companion. Connect with me to ignite your inner wisdom and light the way forward on your living path. You can reach me via my website or email, or on Facebook at Caravan of Dreams MT. Our music is used by permission of the artist, Sean Phoenix. Thank you, Sean. And thank you to Bozeman Public Library for the Workbench Sound Studio located in beautiful downtown Bozeman, Montana. If you would like to learn more about allowing and how to find your unique style of manifesting, please visit my website, caravanofdreamsmt.com, or email me at dancingwitchmt@gmail.com. This is Ginny Watts, the Dancing Witch. Till next time, blessed be.